Welcome to Behind Their Success. This podcast is for people who are feeling stuck on their entrepreneur journey or in their careers. It's for people who want to scale and grow their businesses, learn about the power of mindset, or they just know there's more out there and they want to start making changes. I'm Peyton Squires, the host of the podcast. I was never cut out to be an employee, and when I was an employee, I was bored out of my mind. So I made a plan. I studied and passed the CPA exam in 8 months while working, all with the end goal in mind of quitting my job and starting my own business. I did that in 2014 and has been an amazing wild ride since. So now let's hear from other entrepreneurs and what mindsets, and probably more important, what actions they have taken that have created and led to their success. Hello, everybody. It is Peyton Squires, the host of the podcast. I wanted to kind of introduce this episode before we jumped into it. I had a conversation with Dominic Rubino. It was a great conversation, and I didn't realize coming into that podcast that the vast amount of experience that he has had in different business ventures. You know, for example, of getting a business to $120 million in annual sales, also working with the likes of Tracy, who's a huge figure in the self-development space, but being business partners with him and helping grow one of those business. It was a really great conversation. Dominic is a guy that has tons of experience and really perspective to share for other entrepreneurs. So I'm really excited to release this episode. I hope you guys enjoy.
I am a business owner, and I've just always had that angle. My first company ever, Peyton, I installed Christmas lights. Yeah, nice. But I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It's amazing I'm even alive because I had a staple gun. I had my dad's ladder, and it's always raining here. I'm up there as a high school student. I'm like, yeah, I'll install your lights. I should have died 50 times doing that. probably got close, yeah. And then I went into house painting, which I think, it's got a low barrier to entry, which has got some funny stories on its own. And then I did a bunch of things. I had a chance to finish school, went to university, but I'll tell you, looking at what I do now, I'm an entrepreneur. It's taken me a long time to say the words, I'm an entrepreneur, but I went to school for archaeology. Yeah, wow. See that look on your face is what my parents were doing for years, but I've always had the entrepreneurial itch.
So you've, you started Christmas lights, got into house painting. What was next on the list? Where'd you get after
it's
that?
Funny because the house painting is what got me into other things. I did a lot of door knocking. I'm a fearless cold caller. I don't know where it came from. I just don't care. I walk up to anybody, anywhere and start talking, as you can tell. But I realized I was going up and asking people if they wanted painting, but they would say, hey, can you do gutters? Can you do windows? I'm like, sure. And, of course, what happens next is do my windows. You know what? Maybe you could do the fascia. Can you do the trim? So I ended up backing into it. So I'd walk up to homes and whatever they needed done, that was my pitch at the front door. Hey, I noticed your deck is falling apart. I'm standing on it and I'm sinking as we're speaking. So I started fixing decks and doing a lot of outdoor stuff. And then, university and college caught back up with me. So I kind of left it, but I stayed in that industry in and out for a long time. Then I went to corporate. And corporate was good for me, but I should never I'm not a corporate guy.
It's kind of interesting here where Dominic talks about how he had never felt like an entrepreneur and didn't call himself one for a long time. And, it took me a while to get to that point too. I started my business in 2014 and it was probably 3 or 4 years before I would say I started calling myself an entrepreneur. And I would say calling myself like a professional entrepreneur and really taking all of that serious. It's something I definitely relate on here. And then also, we both kind of had a shared experience here where the corporate jobs just wasn't for us. It certainly wasn't for me as being stuck in kind of a cubicle and being told what to do all the time and kind of micromanaged. As a guy with, certain types of personality, with a guy with an entrepreneur type personality, it's just something that I couldn't do for the long term, or certainly didn't envision my future there. When I had my last real job, it was one that I actually got paid. I was getting paid the most money I'd ever had in my life, but I was absolutely miserable and bored out of my mind. I wasn't being challenged. And that is something that I've learned over the years, that I need to be challenged for me to get close to some sort of contentment and kind of happiness day to day. And I'm finding that balance still today of being challenged, but then also making sure I'm content in the right areas too.
I was blue suit, white shirt, red tie guy at Sprint. I was selling corporate long distance, which for a lot of people listening, they're like, what do you mean selling long distance? It comes for free.
What's long distance?
Yeah. So in those days, long distance calling, like there were different rates, state to state, country to country. I used to sell 1-800 numbers. That was a thing. I'm old.
Yeah. Toll-free numbers.
Numbers with trackback. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
But that, you know what? That's what got me into business coaching right there. Because they realized I had a knack for working with small businesses. So I became the regional manager for the middle of the country, small towns with grain silos or water towers. That was my specialty. That's where they send me. And I just learned to work with trades companies that usually were doing the low voltage electrical installations for the phone company. So I went in there as their sales manager, but I ended up being their business coach, trying to turn them around and get them to use Sprint. And that's how business coaching started. So I was hating the corporate life. It just wasn't me. Like, it really burned, like my stomach wasn't good the whole time. Mm-hmm. And so I started selling used junk on eBay. Junk with a QUE at the end. I was selling like used LED calculators, ColecoVision head-to-head football. You remember the one with the little LED lights? But I'd buy them at a garage sale for $1 and sell them on eBay for 40. So it was good money. I just couldn't find enough product. Because I was a business coach and I'd been studying a lot of business coaching, business improvement, I love learning about the business of business. So long story short, but I turned that into an online bookseller, and then I turned it into a mail order pharmacy. And that mail order pharmacy, I eventually sold. I had a number in my head, and when we hit that number, I sold the company. Because you're going to ask, when we hit 120 million in sales, I sold the company.
So 120 million in lifetime sales?
No, annual sales. Yeah. It was great.
Yeah. So was it kind of the business model, like low margin, high volume?
Oh my gosh, no. When we did it, the margins were ridiculous margins.
Yeah. The only reason I asked that is because I have a client that's in that space, that real low margin volume. They can undercut anybody.
Were they nutraceuticals? Were they doing more nutritional supplements and things like that?
No, they're like a traditional pharmacy, but they can get, they're basically,
they're probably making the money on the prescription or the service charge. Yeah, no, we were definitely in the heyday of that. The industry's changed a lot. We were a legitimate pharmacy, for anybody wondering. Yes, we tried to sell paid, and I'm going to call it lifestyle medications, but we had to get out of that business because our employees were robbing us blind. At that time, one pill was like $50 at a concierge at a hotel. And so our employees, I would literally invoice stuff at the back door. We'd walk it upstairs to the cage and recount, and there was stuff missing. We had call center employees that were MOAs, pharmacy techs, and just people working in a call center. And then we had pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. And these people have, by their dress, you could tell they were from a conservative faith. I'm just going to say very ultra conservative, right? Hijabs and things like that. They're robbing me blind. And so I just stopped carrying the product. And what was interesting there, though, is that I learned the hard way to concentrate on recurring revenue items. Because you could buy, let's say, quote unquote, lifestyle medications once and never buy it from me again. But if you buy from me for high blood pressure or diabetes reasons or any sort of aging things, cholesterol, you're going to buy from me forever. And so we started to view the prescription as a pre-purchase order. And that way we began to, and I want to say this respectfully because I believe it to be respectful, but we started to farm our database. And that's what allowed us to get so large.
When you say farm your database, tell me a little bit.
Let's say that you bought blood pressure medications. Unless you leave this earth, you're going to be buying high blood pressure medications for a long time. Sure. So we would find ways to create relationships with you long term. So one of the things we did is our call center agents had no time restrictions on their call. None at all. They were there to develop rapport. We also had our call center set up that somebody could call in and request a certain agent. And we tried to be respectful of their situation. You had to be very respectful because people were calling because their union had shut down. They had no more benefits. They were on Social Security. They had no money left, and they're trying to buy medications to stay alive. They were in horrible, high stress situations. So we had to really align ourselves with their needs.
Just looking at like the whole pharmacy thing from a business model perspective, right? It's basically like a subscription type model.
Right. But we viewed it as a subscription model. Our competitors didn't. Our competitors tended to have more of a smash and grab approach, where we had a developed relationship. Can I tell you one of the greatest marketing things we ever did, totally by accident? There's actually two. One of them is if you ordered from us, we sent you those pill containers that say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we started to send those to people with every order. And we just bought them from like the promo company, ridiculously low for the returns. As so happens, we ran out one day and our phone started lighting up. Where's my pill box? We're like, okay, well, we can't forget that. So that was really good. And then the second thing we did, which was by accident, is I had playing cards made with our logo on it. Oh my goodness. What I didn't realize is that seniors at seniors' homes or camping were sitting there for hours playing rummy across from each other, looking at the logo of our company. And what would happen is after any major holiday, our sales would spike. And you could see it because if you had, let's say, a unique last name, Squires, let's say, is a unique last name. So we have one Squires in the database before Thanksgiving. Within a week after Thanksgiving, we'd have 7. You're like, well, something's working.
They must play cards.
Yeah. So that was one of our tracking. So and you'll like this as a CPA, we relied heavily on data to make those decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. You made the comment that your competitors didn't see it as a subscription type model. And you're right. They were seeing, especially online or a distant pharmacy, they're seeing it as just a transactional relationship where you guys tried to build a brand.
Yeah. We worked real hard at that. And we could have done better for sure. But I got it to 120 million in sales before I rung the bell and sold it.
That's not nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here at this section, we were talking about the power of subscriptions type models, retainer types models, recurring type business models. You may just call it a subscription model, but from a business perspective, that model as an entrepreneur to me extremely powerful for several reasons. One is if you have a recurring revenue type model, you're not constantly looking for new clients, right? You're not always having to hunt down new clients because you have clients that you acquired in the past that continue to pay. The other huge benefit of it is, one of the other huge benefits is the predictable revenue. It's a whole lot easier to run and manage and grow a business if you know exactly how much revenue is going to come in on a monthly basis. And when you get into the subscription type model, you can get really accurate on revenue forecasting and knowing when and how you can expand. And the final big benefit is, these businesses are just worth more money. A subscription type revenue model is an attractive acquisition for other companies, right? They're looking for cash flow, and a subscription type model is perfect. So there's a whole lot of benefits of getting your business to a subscription type model. And you think any streaming, TV streaming, Netflix or Hulu or whatever, those are really massive businesses that are run purely on a subscription model. Are you looking for a new tax experience? Looking for an advisor that actually brings you high-level ideas and proactively plans so you aren't overpaying your taxes? Or how about one that even just responds and communicates in a timely fashion? If any of that resonates with you, you probably just have a tax preparer and not a tax planner. And it is through the tax planning process where all the value is found. I'm Peyton Squires. I'm a CPA and owner of WR Tax Planner. We work alongside entrepreneurs and high-income earners, helping them pay the least amount of income taxes, both legally and ethically. We have saved our clients hundreds of thousands of dollars through specific strategies, and we guarantee we can find multiple tax saving strategies that your current tax preparer hasn't told you about. If that interests you, head on over to the contact page at PeytonSquires.com. There you can fill out a contact form and get a call booked to see what it would look like to have WR Tax Planners on your team. So that's not your only success in business, right? Didn't you move on to another business?
Yeah, that's right. So I was looking for a company to buy after I sold that. And there's an underlying thing here. I sold that because it was a family business. And so my cousin and I weren't seeing eye to eye anymore. But I had the confidence because I'd been a business coach. I was a business guy. I'm like, I'll just go reinvent myself again. So I ended up buying, there's a gentleman named Brian Tracy, who's a very famous author. He's, a little bit older now, but still wise. And people quote him really solid stuff, right? Some people would recognize his books like Eat That Frog, The Psychology of Selling, The Psychology of Achievement. A lot of really important mindset stuff is holding us back in this world. And so he would be like the Tony Robbins of the serious business people, really serious business people. And so he had started a franchise, but it wasn't doing very well because he traveled a lot and he couldn't support the franchisees. So I bought that from him. He had 6 franchisees. And by the time I sold that, it took about 13 years. I got it up to 237 franchises around the world. Yeah, fun. It was a business coaching company, which is crazy. Yeah. I'm a business coach. I started training people to be business coaches. At one point, my title in the company is I was the coach's coach. So that was my official title. But that's really where I learned about business and strategic planning. That's really where I got traction on that.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's a really high level, interesting experience that not a lot of people really have. Like,
When you say franchises, usually cap out at, I'm sure the vast majority of them cap out at very few. What do you think made you guys different? All that growth path.
Yeah. What made us different? Tenacity. Brian Tracy's name, and I would say this to Brian as well, his name was good. He wasn't the hot shot anymore. He had been on kind of a decline brand wise. So we weren't getting a lot of magnetism, if that makes sense. Like it just wasn't attracting a bunch of people. But I'll tell you what made the difference for us was the power of strategic planning. I've got a number of books behind me, but one of them is called Scaling Up, which is written by a really smart guy named Vern Harnish. And I use that actually at the pharmacy. That's a strategic planning system. It's really a way for an owner to put their plan on paper and then imagine cutting that piece of paper up into a bunch of little bits and handing one to each department head. But we all have the same piece of paper, right? So that would be a good way to say scaling up. Yeah. And scaling up is right for that size of company, around 120 million. Not that we started at 120 because we started at 0, but that was the only one that was around at the time. And then the other one is Traction. And if you can see my screen, that one's written by Gino Wickman. And that's the EOS model. It goes by a couple of different names. People might be doing their VTO, which is their Vision Traction Organizer, or having L10 meetings. There's a bunch of keywords there.
I had 2 L10 meetings this morning.
Yeah. Listen, as a business coach, I have about 15 a week, right? Because that's what business coaching is. It's just, I'm so glad you did that. And you know what? You're a CPA, you're a business professional, you understand putting systems in place, right? Mm-hmm. Both of those are systems for a business owner to get in control or ahead of their business. And I wouldn't start a company or run a company without them.
In this clip, we're talking about the book Traction by Gino Wickman. That whole book is about a system called EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. It's a book that was written with small businesses in mind and realizing that small businesses don't necessarily have a process of how they go about running their business, having their meetings, and conducting organizational charts and having accountability. So as a small business and that the one that is growing, this book is a must read of, okay, how do we actually implement? How do we hold people accountable? How do we all get on the same page and moving in the right direction as a business? Which, isn't super difficult when you're just a couple people, but as you start to grow, to 5 to 10 plus employees, this type of stuff becomes very important into just the day-to-day running of your business. So there's a whole model built around inside this book you'll learn a lot about, and ultimately you can hire outside consultants that come in and help you implement this model. So something as a business owner, if that's something you struggle with, definitely something to check out.
And that's kind of interesting. I think I've ran my own practice in various stages and grown in, and I'm 10 years in. The first 8 years or something like that, I didn't treat my business as a business. I treated my business as something that was my job, that I made money at, that I then went and did other things. Why I'm a CPA, a CFP, I used it to then go do other investments, build other businesses, or I've even built other businesses and sold them. But it's pretty wild that my main business, the one that probably gives me the main point of leverage, that I didn't do that many systems built.
Yeah, it's the plumber story, right? The plumber with a leaky toilet, the roofer with a leaky roof. I don't want to be the business coach without a business plan.
And I think that was just me. It just never was like, it wasn't the vehicle I sold or wanted to necessarily, like, I even had a hard time calling myself an accountant for some reason, right? It was more of like, I'm the entrepreneur and I'm the, more of the investor. But I've had a real shift in that in the last 2 years of really like, wow, how about I spend some time building this and building it properly so I can even step further away and build a machine that doesn't necessarily need me as much.
That's right. And doesn't that take a certain amount of ego?
Yeah.
And here's what I mean. You have to have enough ego to set your ego aside and say, other people in my company can handle that.
Yeah.
And I've got to have faith that they can do it. They might get it wrong. Okay. Or they might get it so wrong, they do it better than me. How about that?
Yeah. Yes. It's some of the best piece of advice I've ever gotten around that. It's as soon as somebody can do something like as 80% as well as you can, let them do it, let them run.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's the hard part though, is trusting that, and you have to verify. You can't just delegate to somebody and let them go, because then you're setting them up for failure. But that like easy transition, handoff, lots of meetings, which people don't want to hear. Paid me, do they?
No.
And yet people don't want to hear it. And yet guys like you and I keep saying it. So there must be some truth in that. And imagine if people could get meetings figured out, short, punchy, effective meetings for making decisions, meetings to hold each other accountable, back to that piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
Back to the strategic plan. What are we doing here? We're working on the strategic plan.
Yeah. It's amazing. I've had several things shifting in the last, even the last 2 months, I would say, in my business. And it's really come back to that, to where it's me, my team.
Yeah.
And like, we had a fantastic L10 meeting this morning where it's, what are we doing? Vision casting, setting. It's like, this is what we want to happen this quarter. We're going to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
And really just making sure that we're on the same page and know where we're going, and we have dates to hold each other accountable on where they need to be.
So can I translate that the way I hear it from other business owners?
Yeah.
So the left hand knows what the right hand is doing.
Yeah. And what goes back to Dominic, where it's almost every human problem is just like miscommunication, right? I, as a business owner, have some vision for my business and where it's going. And I have great members on my team, but I don't communicate it or cast that vision or even set expectations.
So let me bring us back for a second, because people listening right now, my audience is contractors, right?
Yeah.
And so like, hey, I could tell you my vision. That retaining wall's got to go up in 3 days. What are you talking about vision? You guys are all like up in the air, but that's not what we're talking about. Our vision is, it might be as simple as, this is called Rubino Landscape Construction Design. My name is on this and it's going to be the best. That's our vision, is that we're going to do great work, or we're going to do civil corporate work. Or if you're a cabinet maker, our vision is that we're going to build affordable homes for great families. So guys, that's what we're working on here today. So when we've got a problem with the HOA because they won't give us access, we're trying to build affordable homes for fantastic families. That's the vision. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be like a rallying cry that everybody knows. And as the owner, I'm the one who I have to write it on the flag. I have to find a flagpole. I got to raise up the flag and I got to point at the flag. That's really my job all the time.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff for sure. In this clip, we're talking about the book Traction by Gino Wickman. That whole book is about a system called EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. It's a book that was written with small businesses in mind, and realizing that small businesses don't necessarily have a process of how they go about running their business, having their meetings, and conducting organizational charts and having accountability. So as a small business and that the one that is growing, this book is a must read of, okay, how do we actually implement? How do we hold people accountable? How do we all get on the same page and moving in the right direction as a business? Which, isn't super difficult when you're just a couple people, but as you start to grow, to 5 to 10 plus employees, this type of stuff becomes very important into just the day-to-day running of your business. So there's a whole model built around inside this book. You'll learn a lot about, and ultimately you can hire outside consultants that come in and help you implement this model. So something as a business owner, if that's something you struggle with, definitely something to check out.
So let me ask you, when you look at a company and they're going through some sort of transition, let's say it's the normal parents want to sell it to the kids kind of business. Doesn't matter whether it's mother to daughter, father to son, aunt to uncles, doesn't matter. Do you see a difference in the companies that are run on systems versus the companies that are run on random, and the kind of valuations and stresses on the people? Because when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's not about creating chaos. It's about taking chaos and turning it into simple systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the issue, is that many entrepreneurs are the people that go out there and take the chances and move things around, but they're not necessarily the system. I mean, like, those things can go hand in hand, but often they don't. Often the entrepreneur is the chaos maker to some degree. And often they need that integrator or whatever right upside them to try to make some order out of it. I think that is a struggle. And often the entrepreneur is that almost anxious, get after it, get things done type person generally. That's not everybody, but
that's an empire builder. That to me would be a great empire builder. And you mentioned the word integrator. That's what we do as business coaches, is we help that entrepreneur filter through that whole splatter everything against the wall and say, well, let's put some systems in place. So for instance, they'll say, look, I'm trying to grow this business, but I can't hire anybody good to help. How many times have you and I heard that?
No, I mean, it's constant, especially in the last few years.
Yeah. And yet there are great people out there. So why can some companies find them and others can't? I actually learned this. I was speaking at a trade show, and there's a gentleman who is a first generation immigrant. And oh my God, he has built himself an empire. And so he was talking about people and recruiting. And then when I was talking about operational stuff in my breakout room. This is at a conference. So we met up at the bar, as you do, afterwards, and we're talking. And he had such a great way of saying it. He goes, Dominic, when it comes to people, the owner, you've either hired the wrong people or you've hired the right people and you trained them wrong.
Mm.
Like, just straight cut to the point. I like that bluntness, right? So I'll ask anybody here who's saying it's hard to find good people. Let me ask you, do you have an onboarding system? Once you find somebody good, let's say just 5 out of 10 good, can you onboard them right so they're a 7 or 8 out of 10? Or are you just going to suffer the consequences of a mediocre hire who just comes and punches the clock and doesn't really know what's going on?
Yeah.
And you don't have to live that way.
Yeah. And I think the overarching point to all of that is it's your responsibility. No one else is going to fix it. It's no one else's business. It's not ultimately, if things aren't going away in your business and going how you want them to go, it's nobody else's responsibility but you. Right? It's some deficiency in your business that you have the control and the lever to change something to make that not be the case.
That's
and
right.
when we place that blame on the economy or, say through COVID or whatever, there were jobs, labor demand and all that stuff, we give away the power, right? You give away all the power to outside forces, and then you just throw up your hand and say, well, I can't do anything.
It's about the mindset of success. And what you just said there is so true. The cavalry is not coming. I'm it. The strongest leaders have always sought wise counsel.
Yeah.
Hands down. Strong leaders don't just exist on their own. Even if you talk about what a self-made man is, there's people in the background that they rely on for information, right? And so if you're an owner right now and you're wanting to grow, if you're serious about growing the business, who do you call when you need the unfair advantage, when you want somebody whose only concern is you and your well-being and your company's output?
And that's either coaching or living in community. Like for me, I'm a member of a mastermind group, and that sucker's grown significantly. And at this point, there's 40-ish guys, and they're all successful business owners around the country. And I tell you what, I could call any one of those guys and they would pick up the phone and talk to me about my business with zero, there's nothing in it other than they're a part of this group, and this group all helps each other get where we want to go.
And so that comes back to intent.
Yeah.
Intent. Yeah. We run masterminds for the same reason. You have to have people that you can call and just say, it's not a normal conversation. When you sit down at the dinner table tonight and say, hey, how's your day at work? You just can't say to your kids, we're having trouble making payroll.
Yeah, right.
Right? What? You're not going to sleep that night because you and your wife are going to have a very long and painful talk. But you and I could call each other. I go, hey, dude, I am having trouble making payroll. And you go, hey, Kate, Dom, hang on, back up. What about this? What about that? What about this?
Mm-hmm.
And you and I, because we're both business guys, it's just a conversation. And I would welcome the call from you to say, hey, Dom, I got this HR thing going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Or an operational thing, just whatever the question is. But I don't leave the call and go, that Payton's a dummy. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to return the favor. Yeah. That's intent. That's pure. And again, you talked about you're in a mastermind group. People that have like a servant leadership type of mentality, I think understand that more than others.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. This isn't my mastermind group. I didn't start it or really run it, but we've done a really good job of filtering out or, being very specific about the type of people that come into that community. And sometimes people get in there and they wash out because it all plays out all the time. But it's that pure intent that the people that are there on purpose.
Oh my, what a great thing. So what I talk about is running your business on purpose, because it took me a long time to get there as well. I mean, when I was a kid, stapling Christmas lights to roofs, I was just, I don't know, try to get another.
Trying to make a buck, right?
Try to make a buck, get another gig. This might be fun. But when I decided to stop playing at being a business owner is when I started studying business. And that took me down the path of becoming a business coach. I wasn't born a business coach.
In the conversation here between me and Dominic talking about seeking counsel and outside help, that's so key and so key in my growth. I've seen it as an entrepreneur over the years. The more and more money I've invested in coaching and mastermind groups and reading books and listening to podcasts, the more and more I've done that, the more and more skilled I've become and able to grow my business. Because it's truly like the biggest bottleneck in your business is the leader of the business. It always is. And if something isn't happening, ultimately you as the entrepreneur are responsible. And you, as the entrepreneur, have the responsibility to figure out how to make that difference. And so the only way I know how to do that is to continue to add skills, to be continually learning and surrounding myself with people that have done all the things that I want to do or I aspire to do. Once you get around those type of people and you talk to them and they'll share with you how they do things, you can make massive jumps ahead in a quick amount of time by surrounding yourself with other winners.
You know Stephen Pressfield, he's an author. He's one of my favorite authors. He has a book called Turning Pro, and that's exactly what it's about. This guy was, I don't know, 50 or something before he released his first book, and now he's a well-renowned. He wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance.
But we were just talking about that. I was in Denver this weekend, and my son goes, "I'm going to watch The Legend of Bagger Vance."
Yeah, but he's like an amazing author, really, and in all kinds of facets. But Turning Pro is one of my favorite books.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
All about, okay, we're professionals. We are professional accountants. We're professional doctors. Stop playing around with things, right? What would a professional do? And you just, and he says this frankly in the book, is you set your ass in the seat, you do the work, and you stop playing around. And and he talks about it. He names it almost as like this, he calls it the resistance, right? Like for him as a writer, is this resistance to setting down and like writing the book every single day and putting in the time.
The discipline.
Yeah. Yes. And there's a whole level of tension, a whole nother level of tensionality and discipline when you go from amateurism to professionalism.
So I don't want this to sound like a glad-handed view of business coaching, but do you know what a business coach does?
Counsels.
They just don't let you get away with it.
Yeah.
Like if you said your goal is to build a pool in your backyard because it has nothing to do with anything, right? Your business coach is going to say, let's have a meeting every 2 weeks and talk about how you come with the plan. And you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. Sounds good. That's the goal. And your coach is going to hold you to that. Did you get a permit? Do you have the plan? Did you talk to whoever else is important? Where are you going to put the pool? What does it look like? And you think to yourself, I can put a pool in my backyard. I'm using a very dumb example because I don't want it to be business specific. But the fact that you have a meeting with your coach at whatever, maybe weekly or every 2 weeks, or your mastermind group, they're going to say to you at some point, hey, Peyton, how's that pool coming? Oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Why?
Yeah.
Why was that a goal in the first place? What changed? And so business coaches or mastermind group, however you look for outside perspective, helps you shorten time frames.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. From either outside people or outside information, like a book can save you 3 years from one paragraph in a book.
Just to follow up on that comment there about Stephen Pressfield's book, Turning Pro, he also wrote the book War of Art. You know, it's really become one of my favorite authors over the year. They're both short books, so I really highly encourage you read them. They'll give you a lot of perspective change around your work and how you go about it. But I thought this is cool little overview summed up I read about Turning Pro. That kind of really does a good job of summing up the whole book. Was what we get when we turn pro is we find our power. We find our will and our voice, and we find our self-respect. We become who we always were, but had until then been afraid to embrace that and live that out. And that's really what that book's really all about, Turning Pro. It's about becoming a professional. And what comes along with that is a whole lot of intentionality and discipline, but becoming a professional in every area of our life that we want to have success.
I consider myself really a lifelong learner, a guy that reads tons of books, podcasting, all those types of things. Yeah. And I can remember pointing to specific books 7-8 years ago of like, I remember reading that book and I implemented X, Y, Z out of it, and it changed things. One early in my process, I think, was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Okay.
This was probably 8-9 years ago. But the whole concept of that book, if you know anything about it, it's like, hey, okay, let's say you have 4 hours a week, and that's it. Okay. You don't have any more. What are you doing? What are you working on? And then the whole concept is, we'll just do that and delegate and eliminate everything else.
Everything else. Yeah.
And it's not that you only work 4 hours. It's the focus, the intentionality of like, if you only had 4 hours, you're working on these things. That's what you should work.
Work on the first things first. You've heard the analogy, I'm sure, and some people have heard it in different places, right? About there's a professor at the front of the room. It's a first year class. And in front of him is a table. And there's those big, ridiculous mayonnaise jars in front of him. Or let's say pickle jar. You're down in Missouri. It's a big pickle jar. Next to the pickle jar, he's got a pile of rocks. He's got a pile of pebbles. He's got a pile of gravel, a pile of sand, and a big pitcher of water. Have you ever heard this story?
I have an idea what's going on.
Yeah. Let's do this. And it relates right back to strategic planning. But the challenge he puts to this first year university class is, okay, I want somebody to come down here and get all of these items inside this big pickle jar, massive pickle jar, right? The first kid comes down. He's like, well, here's what you do. I'm going to put in the water and the sand at the same time, and then I'll put in the gravel and the pebbles. And what happens, of course, is suddenly the jar is full and he goes backwards, right? He goes, I'm going to put in the water first, and then the sand, and then the gravel, and then the pebbles start to overflow. He's like, okay, fail. Call somebody else. Call somebody else. Call somebody else. Nobody can get it. And the professor says, this is how to make this work. He takes an empty pickle jar, and first he puts in the rocks, the big rocks. And then he puts in the pebbles, and he shakes it, and the pebbles fill in the spaces in between. Looks full. How can you possibly get any more in there? And he goes, hold on, now let's put in the gravel. And he does the same thing. He puts in the gravel and he shakes it. And the gravel fills in the spaces between the rocks and the pebbles. And then he does the same thing with the sand. And then he says to the class, is it possible to get anything else in there? And the class is like, there's no way you can get anything else in there. He says, well, now I'm going to put in the water. And the water fills the spaces between the sand, the gravel, the pebbles, and the rocks. And the point of that story is, from the wisdom of forever or of business coaching, is you have to work on the priorities first. What comes first is the rocks, those big rocks. And for a lot of it's family, it's faith, fitness, finance. There you go. You just wrapped up everything you and I live for.
Yeah. And we talk about it, talk about on this podcast, we call it living healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? That's what we're trying to create, a healthy, wealthy, and wise.
I love that.
Especially the more you go into business, like it's so easy to get distracted, right? And
every day.
Alex Hermoth, I always talk about Alex Hermoth because I listen to a lot of stuff, but he talks about the woman in red dress, right? The attracts, like, as a business owner, there's all these other opportunities that are always around you, and they look attractive, right? Because you're doing your thing and you're like, oh, I could go over here and do this thing and make as much money with less effort. But often we find out that attractive girl in the red dress is
problems.
It's problems. It's just ignorance. We have like irrational optimism because we don't understand what problems are.
Yeah.
We think we do, right? Here's the thing. As you go up and grow your business even more, there becomes even more attractive opportunities, right? But first you see this $5,000 a month opportunity, you're like, that's attractive. But as you grow up and grow your business more and more, like you start to get $50,000 opportunities. And like those other opportunities become more and more attractive, and it becomes more and more important to stay focused.
Brutally focused. And that's the hard part. The real hard part here is saying no. You have to say no, or I have to say no to about 99% of the things that cross my desk. And then that other 1% is no, not now. One of them is emails. If you send me an email, I view that as a 15-minute work order. And so now I have an assistant who handles my emails. The second thing I did after I hired my assistant is I hired her an assistant.
Wow.
Because I want to dollar cost average her up. The assistant I've got right now is probably the best EA I've ever had in my life. It's like having a grizzly bear in your corner fighting over the last salmon in the stream. She's awesome. And when I got her, I thought, okay, she's so good, I have to get her an assistant because I can't have her digging through the sand, using the rocks and sand and pebbles. Like, I need her high level with me, and she's fantastic. And I'm still learning, by the way. But I'm building this to be this is a business podcast, so I'm not ashamed to say it. This is going to be another multi-million-dollar business through helping other people. I view my role in the world as I want to throw enough value at the world that I'm happy with the overspray, that my family is happy with the fine mist that comes off my effort. Think about that challenge. So every day I get up and I've got to throw enough value at the world that I just get the overspray.
It is all about serving and giving value. Like, you can do whatever you want. You can get whatever you want, as long as you are serving people and creating excess value. So if you were to go back to the beginning, go back to that guy stapling the Christmas lights, and could give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
The funny one would be find a way to stay in size 32 pants. That'd be the first one.
Wouldn't get you there.
I don't want to be there anymore. I do lots of powerlifting. So anyways, okay. So that's the first thing that came to my mind. You know what? I should have stayed in a couple of other businesses longer. I only gave you a smattering of the companies I was in. One of the ones that I gave up that I shouldn't have was a vending machine business.
Mm.
Those are silent soldiers just making you money everywhere. The other thing I should have done is invested in every single piece of real estate I saw.
Yeah.
My gosh, I'm a dummy. And I'm a dummy right now for not doing one today, to doing a real estate transaction today. And, you go look at really successful people. It doesn't matter the most successful CPA, lawyer, stockbroker, entrepreneur like us. What do they do when they make a whack of cash? They go invest it in real estate.
Yeah.
Why didn't I start there?
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell you what, my only regrets in real estate as a guy that's done, I haven't done a ton of it. I've definitely, it's been a significant path of mine. But like my only regrets in real estate is all the properties I sold. Like, the only one, you know what I mean? Like every property I have sold in my life, I look back and I'm like, I wish I still.
I know. They're doing a land assembly. I bought a threeplex, a house with 3 suites in it.
Yeah.
Because that's all I could afford at the time. And I thought, there's only 4 houses, the way the block was organized. I'm going to buy the neighbors as they come up. And I didn't. And I ended up selling that threeplex. So they did something called a land assembly, which is like somebody went to build a tower on that land, and you get a premium when somebody wants to build a tower. Yeah. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Somebody else got a premium for that.
And it could have been your premium.
It was not my premium. Yeah. So I'm still learning, but I tell you, this is going to sound so self-serving, but I don't care because you asked me the question. And my answer is I would have hired a business coach or a mentor, somebody I trusted sooner and earlier at the level I could afford it.
Since I have put my ego aside enough and done things like that, like coaching and mentoring and being willing to learn from podcasts and books and whatever, it's been a rocket ship. And especially as I got into a community of like-minded people having these types of conversations, like the type of conversation I'm having with you right now is the type of conversation we have all the time inside that
rare.
group.
You can't have this conversation with your father-in-law because he's still not sure you're the right guy for his daughter.
Yeah. And he can't relate. He has no idea what you're going through.
No, right? Even if he is the best CPA in the city or he's a contractor, the intent isn't there. You need somebody who's got that intent of, like, I'm just here to help you in the business. You care about all your drama. You said you were going to get that done. It didn't get done. Now, you didn't get it done. Okay. How are you going to get it done? Or what did you miss in this little piece of education I'm giving you to get it done? And by the way, is it still important to you? But we're going to get it done.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like coaching with me or my team.
Yeah, absolutely. Is this a goal? Okay. Is it still a goal? Okay. Well, we're going to do that. Right?
Yeah. What are we going to do about that? You're going to think about it or you're going to do it? Yeah. By the way, your kids are watching you. How do you want this to go?
Oh man, you want to get me. Say that.
Right. And that goes back to something we talked about earlier. If you were to buy my daughter's 18, my son's 15. So my daughter's already bought her first car, which is great. I love to fish and hunt. So I have a Suzuki Vitara that I made all ridiculous just for going off road. That's why she doesn't want to drive it because she's a young girl. But do I want to give my daughter a broken down jalopy with no airbags, brakes that don't really work, an iffy ignition system, might not start, could stall on the highway at any time? Do I want to give my little girl that car?
Absolutely not.
No. Why would I do that with my business? My son's going to take over this business one day.
Yeah.
It runs just like a broken jalopy. There's no brakes. There's no ignition. There's no starter. The windows are broken. The seats are torn.
But it's okay because I'm here to put the fire out all the time.
Yeah. Superhero, but you're not going to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't want to be there. And your son doesn't want you there, or your daughter, or whoever's buying it from you. They don't want you there. They want you to go fish or golf or fly a plane or do whatever you want to do. Go on mission work. Go do mission work. Go help somebody else somewhere else, knowing that now your son or your daughter has your business. And so there's a lot more to this. You and I talk about it from a business perspective, but we're solving personal goals.
Yeah. In the future, the next 10, 15 years, especially as baby boomers retire, like the opportunity in all these different businesses, the opportunity to go in and buy businesses, especially some of these businesses owned by, 65-year-old people that are got no succession plan and or a mess, but they could be a mess or they could be established. But I guess the bigger point is there's a whole lot of these businesses that are exchanging hands over the next dozen years or so.
Yeah.
Massive.
I'm sure you have the same stories that I do. And the stories are from heartbreak of other people. So I want to be cautious here. These are things that I hear that me or my team get called in to solve. But just today, this is the call before you. A 52-year-old father died running a cabinet shop, and his son now went from being a guy on the floor to owner of the company. And this poor kid is just tearing his hair out. That was today's phone call. How can I not help him? How can I not find a way to help that kid who's suddenly the president and owner of a company that he used to just eat in the lunchroom? And now he's the guy. His dad died at 52. And I don't want to give some fantastic story here, but those are the things we hear, and I have to help. And you would do the same, right?
No, yeah, for sure. For sure. I tell you, as a guy that has ran a business for a long time, worked with literally thousands of entrepreneurs, I give away 40, 50% of my time. I don't know, it may not be that high, but no joke, like for real. Like
but for good reason.
And for good reason.
Yeah, for good reason.
And there's ways I need to get better protecting some of that stuff and what have you. But like you and my whole team is made up of people like this. We have to be very cautious about protecting our time because we are very much trying to be that servant. Well, Dominic, this has been a fantastic conversation.
It feels like emotionally we've gone high and low. Sorry.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it.
Sorry,
It's a deep, good conversation. People can hear that of really two business guys really getting after it, which is good.
Loving what we do. I can tell you love what you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a difference. When I'm looking for a lawyer or a CPA, I want somebody who likes what they do.
Yeah.
And they want to play around on the edges and try to help me out.
Oh yeah. Get creative.
I don't want a book learning guy who's, I don't know what we need to do and I want to be conservative.
Yeah. That's good. So Dominic, what's the best way people connect with you? They like what they hear. Obviously you're a very accomplished guy. I can imagine your business coaching is extremely valuable. But what's the best way people can connect?
I've got 2 podcasts, so it's a great way. And you and I were joking about this beforehand. One of my podcasts is very specific. So maybe 2 of your listeners even care. 2, maybe. So one of the podcasts is called Cabinet Maker Profit System. So just people that do cabinetry and architectural millwork. And some of you are laughing and shaking your head, and please continue to do so. But the cabinet business is full of just fantastic people building massive wealth in one generation, and nobody pays any attention to it. And we talk about the business of the cabinetry business. And then the second one, I guess I'm wearing the swag today, is Profit Tool Belt. So this is the podcast and the community just around all contractors, really GC and under, general contractor and under. So sub trades in a lot of cases. And it's the business of the contracting business. And you know what? We're doing a training, a free training. It's called Time, Team, and Money for Contractors. Can I just give people my cell phone? Then just text me?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. So if anybody wants to come to that, just say wait list, because you have to be on the wait list to get onto the free training, the professional development training. And my cell is 315-903-7853. And just say wait list, and then you'll make it on the wait list. Because usually it's already taken up with the people in our community. So if you want to jump in, you've got to get on the wait list first.
That's awesome. Anything else you want to leave the listeners with? Any piece of advice?
I said something, you asked the question, and I said something that I think is probably the most important thing today is your kids are watching.
Yeah. And if you don't have kids, there's somebody's watching, right?
Yeah.
And you're a leader to somebody, your family, some member of your family, coworkers, somebody's watching. Be a leader. Listeners, appreciate you listening this time. We'll listen to conversation, and we will catch you next time. Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed that conversation there with Dominic. He was one of the more impressive people I've met and interviewed since I've been doing this podcast. So you enjoyed it, got any value from it? Love to get a like or share out there. It really helps me grow the podcast and kind of reach more people and also reach, guests to bring you guys. Other than that, I'm really in growth mode over on my tax business. As you kind of maybe heard in one of the commercials here. We're really looking to expand our tax planning offering and talking to business owners and people out there as, we're not typical CPAs. We're not tax preparers. We are tax planners. And really where we specialize in is coming into people's businesses and personal situation and finding proactive strategies to massively help you reduce your income tax liabilities in a legal and ethical way. But actually doing this proactive planning with you and not just tax. So if any of that interests you, head over to paidensquires.com, fill out the contact form, and I'd love to be on call with you about that. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Payden Squires.
or going to paidensquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.